You're watching Delta Daybreak.
Welcome back to Delta Daybreak. We're in the Delta Daybreak kitchen. Your time right now is 6:18, and we are looking at the changes coming to healthcare for 2010 with Financial Fridays. Ike Trotter.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Once again, a lot of information that needs to be put out there or kind of reiterated to people and that they need to continue to hear.
Exactly, Stephanie. I tell you, with the passage of the health insurance reform back in March, which some are calling Obamacare, what we're going to see, Stephanie, is probably the biggest change to the future delivery of health care since the enactment of Medicare about half a century ago.
Well, I have to ask, being in the Mississippi Delta, how will that affect us here?
Well, the issues that we fight with here in the Delta revolve around two primary things. First of all, accessibility, the ability of Delta people to get coverage, and then affordability, the ability to get it at a reasonable price. Another problem, though, that we fight with is a good section of the Delta people are covered by either Medicare or Medicaid.
Right.
And if you look at the track record of those two programs, and there's certainly great programs for our Delta people to have, the track record has been that the federal government has not had a very good hand at being able to rein in these costs. A lot of people say that, in fact, the federal government, being in health care as it is to the degree in the Mississippi Delta, has actually caused health care costs to go up.
Right.
So we shall see about what's happening. Now, there's an interesting thing going on. There's some... the health care thing was passed into law and it was signed by President Obama, but there is a possibility that some lawsuits that are being brought to bear by some 12 or more states, which include Mississippi, that these states are challenging the constitutionality of people being required to purchase health insurance. At the heart of this is the fundamental issue: in a free society, does the federal government have the right to force people to be able to buy health care coverage? And we shall see how that plays out in the courts.
Well, I do have to say one bit on this. Those with pre-existing conditions will now be able to find coverage without having someone say, sorry, no.
Exactly.
How will that help us here? I know we deal with a lot of health issues in the Delta.
Well, I think it's going to help a great deal. I can tell you just from a personal standpoint, as you know, I offer insurance in my practice. And it is so frustrating when you can't be able to find coverage for people because they've been turned down. One of the things we talked about in the previous show has been programs such as the guaranteed risk pool through the state of Mississippi, which provides options. But now the whole thing is being changed up with this new program, which you're exactly right. In 2010, insurers will be barred from revoking or canceling health insurance on people, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
What else can we see this year for 2010?
Probably the biggest thing is now children will now be able to stay under their parents' health insurance policies.
Until 26?
Till age 26. And they won't be denied coverage due to pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Another issue coming about is that seniors that are covered under Medicare Part D, now Part D is a new thing that was passed during the Bush administration that covers prescription drug costs. These people will be eligible for up to a $250 reimbursement for charges that go above a certain threshold. There's an area above the beginning of Part D, which has been called the donut hole. A lot of times people get stuck with charges with that. Now people will be able to be reimbursed by the federal government from that. So it's just a lot of things going on there.
I'd say, but looking at the ones for kids being able to stay on until the age of 26, I know just getting out of school, sometimes it's hard to find affordable health care.
It really is. It really is. And that's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. How frankly, and the only way I can gauge this is how does it play here in the Delta. But I think it's going to change the dynamics for health insurance to a great deal here in the Delta. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out.
Well, I know the biggest changes will come in 2014, and we will hit that topic up on the second segment of Delta Daybreak. We're here with Ike Trotter once again for this Financial Friday. Good morning to you, and I have to thank you once again for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Like I tell you, it's weird driving out here, though, with it being light. I'm used to being dark when you come out here.
Well, it's kind of nice, though, to have some a little bit of sunshine.
It is nice, very nice. And hopefully Zach will keep it from getting too hot today.
Fingers crossed on that. But we're talking about a very important thing this morning. We're talking about health care and the changes that you will see this year, also coming in the big changes in 2014.
Exactly. When they passed the law, they're putting most of the brunt of the law changes in 2014. And I've got several of the things to talk about. You ready to get started with it?
Let's roll.
By 2014, individuals will be required to have health insurance coverage or pay an annual penalty which could climb to as much as $750 or 2% of your income, whichever is greater.
It's a lot of money.
By 2014, insurers will be required to provide coverage to all Americans regardless of their health status. By 2014, if you aren't enrolled in an employer-sponsored health care plan, you will have to buy coverage yourself. One option will be now that in addition to the availability of private health insurance, is through these new state-sponsored insurance exchanges. Now, please don't ask me what those are, but they're going to be a new type of entity for people that may have trouble getting health insurance.
Okay.
And finally, one of the more interesting things is after 2014, businesses with more than 50 employees could be fined as much as $2,000 per worker for failing to provide coverage to their employees. So that's an interesting wrinkle to this situation. It goes back to what we talked about in the first half hour, Stephanie, about the lawsuits being brought forth about the constitutionality of the federal government requiring people to have health care coverage. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And once again, let's go over real quick. If you did miss the first segment, what you'll see this year, just a couple of
What you'll see for this year is that people will not be able to be turned down due to pre-existing conditions. You'll also see that children will be covered till age 26. And you'll also find that the federal government can reimburse seniors that are on Medicare up to $250 for certain Medicare Part D expenses in which they have some additional out-of-cost pocket. The bottom line of this whole thing, Stephanie, is that the success or failure of this new health care, or what people are calling Obamonomics, has to do primarily with money and the ability or the inability of America to be able to rein in costs. If we can't rein in these costs, we're going to be just like we are with Medicare. And they told us 45 years ago that Medicare would save money. Well, it hasn't happened with Medicare. Medicare is a wonderful thing for society and been so beneficial to so many Delta people here. But the costs are really, really high. And we shall see if this new program will help.
What's the main benefit that you can see for people who live in the Delta?
Hopefully more accessibility to cost. What you find is here there's not enough competing companies that are providing health care to people where they'll have choices. And that'll happen. And always is the affordability of coverage. Can you get this at a reasonable cost? Nowadays, couples having to pay $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a month for health care is just.
It is.
What do I say this time of morning? It's just you can't do it. And so we shall see how this will play out. Now the Congressional Budget Office says is that this new program will not only save money, but will help to reduce the budget by some $143 billion over the next decade.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and after a decade after that, it could be in the trillions.
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
Now, the critics, on the other hand, say that all this will do basically is increase costs and limit affordability and accessibility. We shall see.
We shall
Stephanie,
see.
Just do not know.
Well, Ike, thank you so much just for kind of talking with everyone once again and letting them know, this is something you just have to kind of keep revisiting just to keep everyone up and aware.
We could talk about this every day for the next 30 days, and it's a huge undertaking. We shall see how it works out.
We look forward to having you back on our next Financial Friday. Ike, thank you very much for all you've said this